Good evening, everyone. My name is Ware Harmon. I'm the Executive Director of Town Hall Seattle. On behalf of our staff and the African American Writers Alliance, it's a pleasure to welcome you to tonight's presentation, celebrating the life and work of Bell Hooks. As we get underway, I want to acknowledge that our institution stands on the unceded traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, and particularly the Duwamish. We thank them for our continuing use of the natural resources of their ancestral homeland. We're very glad you're here to join us this evening for our virtual presentation. Should run around 60 minutes, including Q&A, and you can submit your own questions for the Q&A portion by entering meet.ps/AAWA in your browser or scanning the QR code right now on the screen with your smartphone. We'll drop that link in the chat as well, and you can click directly through there. You can submit your question at any time, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. And for what it's worth, you can submit yours, enter yours into the tool directly whenever the mood strikes you. The sooner the better, and that way we'll be all stocked up when it's time to transition to Q&A. Also, a small reminder, if you'd like to view the program with closed captions, click the CC button in the bottom right corner of the video player. Town Hall is adding new events and podcasts every day, and upcoming programs include, in partnership with the Wing Luke Museum, Jeff Yang, Phil Yu, and Philip Wang joining us to discuss their new book, Rise, A Pop History of Asian America from the 90s to Now. And writer Frances Kaiwa Wong will share her lyric reflections on family, hope, and Asian American culture. Visit our website to learn more and to join our email list where you can get updates as programs are added throughout the season. Town Hall's work is made possible through your support and the support of our sponsors. And as part of our Arts and Culture series, this event is supported by For Culture, Arts Fund, Seattle's Office of Arts and Culture, and AAWA. After all that, as you may likely know, Town Hall is also a member-supported organization, and I want to thank all of our members joining us for tonight's event. If you share their belief that our community is strengthened by discussions of civics, science, and culture, please consider supporting us by donating or becoming a member yourself. We like to say that beyond being a place that hosts ideas and creativity by, for, or about folks in our community, we want Town Hall to be a place where we can all come together to celebrate our successes and mourn our losses. And I would say that both of those are in play tonight, I guess, with a program of authors engaging in real time with the life and legacy of Bell Hooks, and in particular, her 1990 essay, Homeplace, A Site of Resistance. Another thing we like is that when we see an opportunity to lift something up into community discourse, it's always fantastic when there are thoughtful voices at the ready to create something wholehearted out of a mere seed of an idea. And so with that, we're especially grateful to welcome the African American Writers Alliance, an informal and supportive forum for diverse and dynamic collective of new and published Seattle area writers of African descent. They help one another polish their skills, provide peer review, and create opportunities for public readings and other media venues. Ultimately, the group encourages members to publish individually and collectively, and their stories, triumphs, tragedies, whatever is within and between the two, are themselves the history of African Americans. Please join me in welcoming poet and author Minnie A. Collins and author Joseph Gaylord Sisson, the co-facilitators of this evening's discussion, who will in turn introduce our panel. Thanks so much.
Good evening. Joseph Gaylord Sisson. I am Minnie A. Collins. We are co-facilitators. And I'd like to start with, of course, always thanking, showing gratitude. So thanks again, always, to Town Hall, the production team, Evan, Candace, and Ware Harmon. And it's budding like springtime, intersection with the Afro-American Writers Alliance, members and guests. We too, like spring, are opening our voices again in a dialogue and conversation called Clarifying the Intersectionality of Women, Feminism, and its connection to Bell Hooks' essay, Homeplace, A Site of Resistance. This essay is found in her book. Can you see it there? Yes. The book's title is Yearning, Race, Gender, and Cultural Politics, published in 1990. today, and every day. Feminism has always been here ever since you can't even think about it. It began as a week-long proclamation by former President Carter in about 1978 and 80, and eventually became in 1987 Women's History Month. But these women's movements have existed as far back as you have any images of even your own mothers, grandparents, grandmothers. And I think especially a character in Beloved, Toni Morrison's book, which is based upon the history of a woman named Margaret Garner, who sacrificed her daughter rather than to see her and her sons enslaved. These movements of women are not exclusively for women or men's movement. Why should I even be involved with feminism? Because it had both negative and positive connotations. As far back as labor unions in other nations across the globe, as far back as the right to vote, the suffrage movement, the 19th Amendment, and on we go, right up to the time period in which Bell Hooks lived, when we had contemporary feminism in the 1970s, a double-edged sword, excuse me. Thinking perhaps media showed the women's movement as only for women, women against men. Women's participation means you're rejecting the Black man. And on it goes even today, without realizing that the intersection of the women's movement and the feminist movement and Bell Hooks' entire repertoire of reading is focusing on a coming together, a bonding and intersectionality of women and men, BIPOC, LGBTQIA, physically and mentally challenged communities, forging an unbreakable site of resistance. Now, Bell Hooks, one of the perhaps foremost well-known or widely read feminists, born in 1955 in a segregated area of town of Kentucky. Her parents named her Gloria Watkins. Bell Hooks is the name of her maternal great-grandmother, and Bell Hooks, lowercase, is what she chose. Bell Hooks, that is. Gloria Watkins chose as a way, I call it, to honor her great-grandmother and to use as her pen name. She uses the lowercase, she says in one of her essays, to emphasize the content, the necessity of her writings, not the announcement of her name. By that I mean Gloria Watkins. She has written over 43 books, including some of the most beautiful children's books on the same topics about love and bonding, numerous articles, interviews on YouTube. She started writing one of her first books, Ain't I a Woman, when she was 19 years old. Now think about that, writers. At 19 years old, she started this book. And let's see, eventually it was published in 1980 or 81. Her dissertation focused on Toni Morrison. She has numerous degrees and has worked in areas ranging from African-American studies to women's studies, academic world interviews, and as of her latest accomplishment, she has established a foundation in Berea, Kentucky, at Berea College, where she worked during her last days. So her work lives on. Her critical thinking skills are just pounding and budding each time I read her. And for her, feminism, and I quote, "Feminism is for everybody. It's a quest for equality, a movement to end sexism, sexist exploitation, and oppression. It does not cause fear, and it is not a fantasy. It is not anti-male. Loving among all people is having meaningful relationships, but those relationships take time. Thank you. Gaylord, are there thoughts you'd like to add?
No, but I do have something that I would like to read.
Okay,
Is it
but
an appropriate time?
first we need to have Dr. Georgia McDade explain AWA.
Okay,
All
fine.
right. Okay. Dr. Georgia
Hello,
McDade,
everybody.
one of
Thank
our
you for
co-founders.
joining us. The
Mhm.
African American Writers Alliance, which we refer to as AWA, AAWA, was founded in 1991 when Californian Randy Eddins came to Seattle and could not believe that she could not find a group of African American writers. So what did she do? What many of us do when we can't find what we want. She began this group. So February 1991, we began, and we have met continuously since that time. Presently, there are more than 30 members who have paid, but I know the list is much, much longer when it comes to the number of people who have participated. Right now, we have done 6 anthologies. One is at the press, and many of the members have published their own books. So I also refer you to our website to find out more about this organization of which we are so very proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McDade. Now, as we begin this conversation and dialogue, we are trying our best to look at the essay entitled Homeplaces. Not that we agree with it, but we want to have different perspectives. So I want to know how Helen Collier can give us her insights about Bell Hook's theory in Homeplace. Helen Collier, meow, please help us.
All right, I'm unmuted and I would, good evening. My name is Helen J. Collier. I am honored to be a part of this discussion on Bell Hook's theory of Homeplace and what it has meant to us as Black Americans in this country. I am a writer of many genres. My brand name is Meow the Louisiana Catfish. I mainly write about the lives of my Black people brought to this country as slaves and about how they have lived at the hands of white people in this country after slavery. My narrative speaks to that subject. Bell Hook's theory of Homeplace was written as a result of how we as Black Americans have lived in this country. Can one imagine a mother having to walk 12 miles to see her child, as Frederick Douglass's mother had to do? Even after slavery, as Hook states, we lived in an environment of fear of our surroundings and the threat of losing our lives by the white people who control what we could or could not do by any means necessary, even if it meant the destruction of our lives. We lived as lambs in the land of wolves, waiting to kill us for any or no reason other than our skin was Black. Bell Hook speaks to the fact that our lives was under siege at all times. Her theory is that the one place where we found refuge was in Mama's home, our home place where the white folks didn't come. In Mama's home, we could be ourselves, unabridged and unafraid to talk about the horrors of our lives unmasked, having had to wear those masks much of the day in the environment of white folks. They had selfishly kept everything that would help us for themselves. She further speaks to the fact that our mothers worked for white people who cared nothing about their lives, feelings, needs, or their words about their families. It was only their needs that mattered, using our mothers' bodies as though they belonged to them and not to us. Our mothers were forced to take care of them no matter how much time it took at their underpaid jobs or who was at our home unfed or needed our mother's care. They never thought of our suffering, only their own. Hook notes that when our parents left that fearful world that had extracted their blood, sweat, and tears, Mama's home place awaited their arrival. It was a place where they could at last feel free to regain their strength of endurance. Hook's theory speaks about how that was done in the home of Black women, and the importance of having a place where they could rest physically and spiritually from the fearsome people who control their lives. It gave them the strength to endure. It was a place where we as families and friends could gather together and be free to express ourselves in thoughts and action, not controlled by white folks. People who looked to kill us for no reason other than they say they hated our skin color, but more likely it was their freedom to take our lives and not be punished as we would have had it been us taking their lives. There were no homelessness among us because back in the day, Black women always gave refuge in our home place to other Blacks, even if it were on the floor of someone's house. Once we assimilated into the mainstream white society, we gave up our home place and an important part of ourselves for their whiteness. Hook believes it to be a cruel way of life that never gave love or care for those of us who had physically been forced to take care of their whiteness all of our lives. Hook's theory speaks to the fact that something moral has always been missing in their mental ability to show compassion or to see that without Black help, they would have had to do for themselves what they extracted from us. We gave up home place that Black women provided for us, where we could unmask and truly embrace the beauty of our Blackness and the value of who we are and have always been as a race of people. We exchanged it for their cold, white, empty, artificial environment of selfishness. Even today, they find reason to undermine our efforts as American voters to be treated the same as any white American voter. They don't care that we know what they're doing with the voting laws that take away our ability to vote, as long as there is nothing we can do to stop them. Those that are government officials in states where they're responsible for every citizen in their state have made it apparent that we are still separate and unequal to their white constituents. My question to my people is, was it worth the loss of Bell Hook's theory of Black women's home place where we learn to embrace each other with love, only to have it replaced to live in an environment of selfish, unkind, and cruel whiteness? Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. I like that question at the end. Have we lost our home places? And I'm just curious, as we move forward with Noni Irvin, that she might have some thoughts and poetic reflections on her experiences with home places. Because a home place is beyond just brick and mortars. And I thank you, Helen, for adding that's a refuge, a place for healing. So Noni, can I hear from you?
Thank you, Ms. Minnie, and thank you, Town Hall Seattle, and all of the writers on here today. So my name is Noni Irvin. I am a writer of poetry and of children's books, and this essay was really powerful to me. I unfortunately didn't get a chance to experience bell hooks in any of my school studies, and I think it would be wonderful to see these and her works introduced in middle schools, high schools, and colleges everywhere. So I immediately recognized my experience in the second paragraph of her book, of her essay, where she says, "Oh, that feeling of safety, of arrival, of homecoming when we finally reached the edge of her yard." I was reminded of my grandmother's 85th birthday. We all ascended on her lawn. You know, you kind of take a breath and you relax when you're home. I know what that feels like. At the time, I had not seen my father in about 20 years. We had talked recently, but I hadn't seen him. And when I got off the airplane, he was the first person that I recognized. And when I went to give him a hug, it was the familiarity of Old Spice and incense and a little bit of catfish, I'm sure. But I knew I was home. I knew I was safe, and I knew that I was where I needed to be. And I didn't have to worry about anything. So, you know, for me, that's, you know, my first book, Verbatim, is a book of poetry entitled Verbatim, Living, Loving, and Surviving. In the chapter Surviving, I have a poem called Home. And as a child, a survivor of childhood trauma, I'm very clear that home is not necessarily where your house is or where you live, but home is a sense of being. And so I'll read it for you now. Home is more than where your heart is. It's where your family is. And if you've been without them for as long as I have, you halfway don't know what to do when you finally meet them. Aunts, uncles, cousins, siblings, standing in the midst of people you look like, sound like, and laugh like. You feel welcomed, accepted, and loved. You have finally dropped your guard and can be genuinely you. You are safe, you are relieved, you are home. Yes, you are finally home. And what a long road it has been getting here. And I think it's curious, even being the author, that I put that poem in the chapter called Surviving, because you have to survive your present to get to a place of home. The next part in Bell Hook's essay that I really felt was when she quotes the Buddhist, the Vietnamese Buddhist, and he says, resistance, a root must mean more than resistance against war. It is a resistance against all kinds of things that are like war. And as a mother of Black children, Black boys who become Black men, and when they leave our home, we don't know what they will encounter. We don't know, we know that there's a world that doesn't embrace them, and we don't know what violence awaits, or we live with a normalcy of knowing that exists, and unfortunate normalcy. The other part of her essay, and the last part I'll speak to, is the very, very last part of that essay, which says, we can make home places that space where we return for normal and self-recovery, where we can heal our wounds and become whole. And as a mother, my response, this is my response to that. This is how I resist. This is how I define the space, and it's called soft spot. I kiss them on their neck, the soft spot below their ear. It's obvious and known to most of us. I used to find it when they were fresh out of the bath, before and after covering them with baby oil. I would find it when they were sick, tummy aches and fevers alike. Now I make sure to find that special spot, though I have to stand on my tiptoes to reach it. I kiss them on their nose, forehead, and cheeks. They know it's me when I find that soft spot below their ear on either side. It is the place of unconditional love, anytime acceptance, and unmerited favor. Shake it off and try again. Get up, stand up, move forward. You got it, and I will always have your back. An enveloping love that heals every part of our core. I kiss them when we will be gone from each other for short or extended periods, whether feeling strong and powerful or nursing an injury of my own. With words, I love you or see you soon, and without. It is an instant, the confidence of knowing they are loved in the center of their humanity, a reset button that calibrates anything ever wrong, that soft spot below their ear on either side. Thank you.
Thank you, Noni. That soft spot, wow. It definitely would be a huge barrier against any of those things that could even be like war. Thank you. And Margaret Barry, please tell us more about your experiences with unconditional love and home places as a poet also. Margaret Barry, are you here, Margaret?
I'm here. I'm unmuted now. Thank you, Minnie and Noni, for that soft spot. You know, home place. I never thought of home place as a site of resistance. And I didn't know home place could be such a powerful word. Though the history is there, safe place for us to be loved, encouraged, and respected. Our mothers and grandparents resisted the domination and oppression outside the home, but not bringing it in the home. My mother kept my siblings and I say for over 20 years. She brought her manners, the silence, and her unwillingness to share her past. And unfortunately, I didn't know the information we shared for the schools or on the job, for job applications can harm me, such as my sex or my ethnicity, which brings me to the topic of intersectionality. And that's defined as an overlapping, interdependent system that targets our social and political identities, which are then is combined to create methods of discrimination. Now, I identify my name, my birth name, Margaret, and my birthplace, Seattle. But I have been labeled as a Negro, an African-American, Black, female, mother, grandmother, kinship caregiver, and a senior citizen. And these identities or labels that create modes of discrimination and disadvantages for me. We are constantly being recorded on the application that says, check the box that applies on your medical forms and schools, employment, the bank, and more. And I'm mostly unaware of the consequences that can harm me. I'll share a story. It's about a Black family and home who was destroyed by that system of harm called intersectionality, discriminatory policy on what we call the war on drugs. The target was and is the anti-war left and Black people. The couple in their late 20s had 3 children and were buying their first home. His employer of many years decided to outsource its business to another country. So he became jobless. He was offered an intersection or like a juncture. He was offered drugs to sell. And at first he resisted. Then he said, I have to take care of my wife and children. He started to hustle and move fast, sold drugs, and made lots of cash. She was alarmed, anxious, and frightened as she watched him. He kept saying, I gotta take care of my children. And he meant every word. He loved his children. He said again, just doing it for a little while until, and she said, until what? But there was no turning back. She didn't sign up for drugs. She had a job. Didn't she count? She didn't know how to tell him. She couldn't make herself agree. She was scared to death of what was happening. She was scared for herself. She was scared for her house would be broken into by the police and her babies would be taken away and she would be put in jail where Jim Crow controls. There's a war going on and it's not a war on drugs. It never was a war on drugs. It's a war on families and friends that look like him and her, that look like me. It's devastating for all. Kin and friends to this day are missing in action and many are dead. Nonetheless, amid the war, she found her voice and spoke out. She walked away from her husband. She walked away from the house and all its pretty things. She walked away with her children. She walked away with a peace of mind. And she created another home space. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. I love how you have put together labeling and boxes that we all, unfortunately, are continued to be restricted by them. But there's value, I'm suggesting, and I think Dr. Georgia McDade will talk to us about intersections and value of women and home places. Dr. McDade. Are you there?
I am here.
Thank you.
The first time I read the essay, I had not heard the word home place. I don't think I've seen it anywhere else, but I knew exactly what she was talking about, because so often what some people define as home is not true in my case. And by the time I got to the Frederick Douglass quote, or after reading the Frederick Douglass quote, I knew exactly what she was talking about. And I'll tell you a little story. I'm one of 8 children. I have 3 brothers and 4 sisters. So one day, one of our brothers went by one sister's house, and a Sunday too, discovered she had not cooked, and he wanted to know what was wrong. So he went to the second sister's house, and guess what? She had not cooked either. And he was really angry there. But he went by sister number 3's house and said, "What do you have for dinner?" And she laughed and said, "I'm not cooking today." And although I'm sister number 2, he came to my house 4th and told me, "You know, they haven't cooked. What have you cooked?" And I burst out laughing and said, "Oh, I haven't cooked." And he said, "What do you mean? I've been to 4 houses today and nobody has cooked. My dear cooked every day. Every day she cooked." And I don't know where it came from, but I replied, maybe she'd still be alive had she not cooked every day. Like Frederick Douglass, this was the adult Frederick Douglass. The young Georgia had no idea what my mom was doing, but she was a maid. She would come home, and you just don't know how often I tried to find something to fix dinner, and I just couldn't. There wasn't enough, and I believed in recipes. If you don't have the ingredient, you can't fix it, okay? And I would just feel so bad, but she would come home. I don't remember my mother sitting down very much. She was an usher, so even at church, she was standing. I just don't have many pictures. She would come straight through our shotgun house and go in the kitchen and start fixing something. And lo and behold, she would prepare something. And I had looked and looked and tried and couldn't come up with anything. And she did that over and over and over again. And that was one of the few places that I was never worried about being safe when my mother was there. Now, if she wasn't there, it was something different. And I feel so bad that Frederick Douglass, who in my estimation was a brilliant man, could say that his mother did not give him or nurture him in the way that she should have. If you think about the fact that that woman worked all day in the fields. Remember, she was enslaved. She walked 12 miles to get into bed with him, stay there until he went to sleep. And then she walked back 12 miles and was up in time to go back to work. It's something about that, but it's something that's so true of what so many of us women do. We do what is necessary to keep our children safe, to protect them as much as we possibly can. And unfortunately, so many of them never recognize the sacrifices that we made, the prices that we paid. And so for bell hooks, and I know there are many women who understand it, I say it's not that writers are so brilliant, it's just that we are observant, and I think we're more observant than the everyday person, but then we take it one step farther. We take the time to write about it. And I am so glad she took the time to talk about this home place. And I'm so glad that I know a number of women who have provided this home place over and over and over again. We Black women have had a tough road to hoe, as they said when I was a kid. In this country, race is the biggest section. And after that, I think it's gender. So to be a Black person, you have to deal with that discrimination. And then to be a woman, now you throw in some poverty, education or the lack thereof, And then you can just go on and on and on and make the list bigger and bigger. But so many of us are what we are today because we had those home places. Mama did it, or grandma did it, or big mama did it. Sometimes Annie did it, and other times those women weren't even related to us, but they did it. And some of them had children. So I tell myself it was easier. They already had children, so they just took care of a few more. But other people had no children, and they still made these places. And very often there was a daddy there, and there was a big papa or a grandpapa or a pops. But we had those places, and they nurtured us. And I like to think that some of what you see here today is the result of those home places. And I'll be forever grateful to Bell Hooks for introducing me to that word. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McGee. The power of those generations of women, whether they were by blood or by community alliances. Let's hear more about the generations of home places from Dee Williams. Are you here, Dee?
Yes, I am, Miss Minnie. Thank you so much. My name is Dee Williams, and I'm a writer and also a passionate advocate for health and wellness in the African American community. Health for your mind, your body, and your spirit. 3 generations of Homeplace is the reflection I had when I read this piece by Bell Hooks. It took me back to an earlier time in my life, and I'm going to tell a pretty personal story. But it has to do with the 3 generations of women that I was raised under the roof of, and a little bit about their story. The house that we lived in was 3 stories with a basement and a grand staircase that led up to our apartment on the 2nd floor. Great-grandma and grandpa lived on the 3rd floor. Grandma, mom, and me and my sisters, we all lived on the 2nd floor. We moved to Cincinnati before I was born, or they moved to Cincinnati before I was born, from Memphis. The family roots were even from a deeper place south in New Orleans. Living with these 3 generations of Black women set the tone for my life, and that household was truly blessed, in my opinion. Great-grandma was very religious. We went to church with her every Sunday until she could no longer attend. Great-grandma was our rock, our elder, a very calm wisdom keeper. I cherished the time we had together before she was gone. She left Memphis during a time at which there was out and out rioting in that town. Here's why. The white residents there were unaccustomed to seeing African Americans in positions of power. This was at a time when folks were getting proud and showing that they could do things on their own and not relying so much on the system that had oppressed them for so long. And a lot of folks weren't comfortable with that, so they literally rioted that town and tried to intimidate and force people into a mode where they may not have felt so confident anymore. But my grandmother, with my mom and my great-grandma, they all left Memphis at that time. So this was the backdrop for them leaving Memphis, coming into the Ohio Valley, into a town called Cincinnati. My grandma, she was more of a free spirit. She had only one child, my mom, but they really didn't have a very close relationship. My grandma walked me to school every day, and I do have remembrance of this, going to school with her holding my hand into the elementary school where I attended. My mom, she worked multiple jobs, and these 3 women had created a system of coexistence in that home. The owner of the house was a Jewish man. He lived on the 1st floor, so right down below us was the owner. And we were ruckus. We were a bunch of kids. We were having our fun, and my mom, she would like to have parties periodically. So the house was a busy and active place, but this man, he didn't complain. He didn't come and tell us to be quiet or anything. He lived quietly on the 1st floor. So we felt like we were in a safe place, let's just say it that way, at the time. However, this was in the mid-60s. And in the mid-60s, in my lifetime, all hell broke loose during that time in my hometown. My hometown was Cincinnati. This was a time when JFK was killed in 1963. Malcolm X was killed in 1965. MLK in April of 1968, and RFK June of 1968. They were all assassinated, and at that same time, the Vietnam War was also raging. My neighborhood, Avondale, was the epicenter of the riots in 1968. Black people had enough and were demanding justice. Buildings were burnt down and people were protesting against what Arthur Bell Hooks called white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. We were not allowed to play outside during this time. We had to stay behind the fence of our yard because the National Guard was patrolling our neighborhood on a regular to make sure that Black folks stayed in the house or out of the streets for a period of time. However, each of these three matriarchs showed me what it means to get up when you fall down, dust yourself off, and get back to becoming a whole human being. And what Bell calls being an enlightened witness, to becoming critically vigilant about the world we live in. So I take that away from her writings and the things that she's left us as her legacy. The three Black women who left the South and landed in Ohio for a better life, each one, I feel, triumphed by surviving the hatred of the segregated South and the struggles of the segregated North. Each woman was courageous in the face of the harsh realities of their lives, of our lives. We were all there together. But we got down on our knees every night to pray before going to bed. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. And if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Amen. Thank you, Miss Minnie.
Thank you, Dee. That brought back memories of growing up with my grandmother, and maybe all of you on this screen have the same prayer every night. And note, all of those generations of feminism occurred before the word even was found out, okay? So that's beautiful. And let's find more about the intersectionality and feminism with Kamari Bright. Please join us, Kamari.
Thank you, Miss Minnie. Dee, that was spot on. I remember saying that prayer in my grandmother's house with my mom. The thing that really resonated with me about this essay from Bell Hooks was I felt that it clarified the necessity for intersectionality in feminism. I thought she did a great job at illustrating how feminism is the tool, and it's the responsibility of the wielders to make sure that that tool is not used as a weapon against each other. My favorite quote that really just jumped out at me from this was, any force which estranges and alienates us from one another serves the interest of racist domination. And if I can take that quote just a step further, because I also like to try to decentralize the United States, because we take up a lot of space globally. I think that quote can also say anything that separates us or estranges us serves the interest of domination, period. And I think when we don't consider intersectionality in feminism, we imply that there's one experience, and we give the power of the dominant group to dictate what that experience of feminism can be. And when we do this, feminism becomes that tool that upholds that power structure for the dominant group at the expense of everybody that it's silencing. And to deny the unique and distinct experiences of people perpetuates this idea that we're not all interrelated. We're so connected to each other. Everybody who lives in the same household, same neighborhood, same ecosystem. It's not even just us as people. Our environment is connected to us. And so when we don't consider that we're all interrelated, we have to have, well, I'm going to say, because they didn't, some of the earlier feminists did not consider that we're all interrelated and didn't work in the narratives of other women aside from white women. We had thought structures like womanism and other ideologies that were developed to include Black women and other women of color. Those ideas were created to just uphold the wholeness of a person, the entirety of a person, regardless of their sex. It did not exclude, similar to what Ms. Minnie was saying, it did not exclude, and it wasn't in opposition to other people. And so I feel like the thing that I really took from this passage was that if we don't consider intersectionality within feminism, or whatever our liberation structure is, we do ourselves a disservice. Any infringement that happens to Indigenous women, or to Black women, or to poor women, or to trans women, or to immigrant women sets a precedent for what can happen to anybody else, not just women. And I feel like one of the quotes that really sums that up for me is by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that says, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And in this context, I feel like it's injustice to anyone is a threat to everyone. And so I feel like Bell Hooks did such an adept job at illustrating that, and also showing the genius of women to create with whatever they have, whatever the circumstance, whatever the tools, whatever they got is what they're going to make something meaningful from.
Oh, thank you so much. And I too love that same quote about, and I think of Audre Lorde's poem called Eye to Eye. She says, "Do not allow," paraphrasing here, "any form of oppression to work against each other." Thank you, Kamari Bright. And the last person, not the last person, but another thought from this is looking at the relationship and the intersectionality between men and women. So join us, Gaylord Sisson, Joseph Gaylord Sisson, because he wants to share with us his thoughts on relationships between men and women. Gaylord, please, you have the screen.
Thank you very much. And yes, my name is Gaylord Sisson. I write memoirs, poems, and I just recently published a book called Down the Road of Peace. And I have to tell you that I had never heard of Bell Hooks until she was introduced to me by the African American Writers Alliance, and many in particular. So this is what I have to say, because then I read her essay, and Bell Hooks' essay, Homeplace, a Site of Resistance, connects me to my upcoming trip to East Africa. The African continent and Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, is the supposed domestic space and has been a crucial home place site for organizing and forming political solidarity. Some of the views of Bell Hooks are controversial, such as womanhood is a form of cultural aggressives. That should stimulate, in my opinion, conversation with listening men. Oh my, hold on a minute. Found in all society, the action of individuals attract attention globally. And women are keen on defending actions of men, listening only to other men and acting on those suggestions. Those men whose understanding about what is natural or normal for women have conjured up other male fantasies perpetuated because of their lack of female input. But indigenous people living in a continent named by foreigners and not included in identifying their location insults them by European dominating political factors that do not prioritize their input or constantly repeated that insult. Until the European invasion and forced colonization, American indigenous societies always included women's viewpoint as the people of Africa. All women are actively or passively involved in their tribal society and traditional norms. Today, leadership the world over, women are involved in decision and inclusiveness, using contemporary technical advances, struggling with our political society to teach children leadership by means of ancestral traditions found in evolutionary Homo sapiens survival tactics, male dominance of cultural innovations and technology, demonstrate means to feed and increase human population, but are examples of pejorative and non-inclusive wealth-building interaction with other humans. Men empower other men. I conclude this way. Bell's Hook Homeplace, a site of resistance, focuses on bonds between women and family affairs that are different from the male dichotomy found in history. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kabibi is our last or next person. Kabibi Monet, I'd like for you to share some of your challenges, or if you wish, your commentaries that are critics of our guest Bell Hooks, the author of Homeplaces.
There was a part of Ms. Brooks's words that hit home to me. They really kind of gave me a lot of preponderance. It was like, why is it that incest, I'm noticing, is really being highlighted a lot. I know that there were cultures where, they wanted brother and sister to, procreate together because they wanted their bloodline to stay strong. And I know tribes of some other cultures don't see the damage that incest does. I have a cousin who had her son and her father's son. You know what I'm saying? And I thought, wow, when my parents told me that, he's her father plus her child is his child, I couldn't quite wrap my head around why that was. I didn't know until I got into the young lady that we're talking about now, the sister that just passed. There was something that she wrote in her upbringing and how the father, it just seems like it's so prevalent in our culture that you always have to look out for that predator. I don't know how many of you have gone through, having to stop someone in the family from, doing something to you that they shouldn't have. But if you have, it seems like we're ignoring it. And my aunt would ignore the fact that he was a predator. We ignore the fact that Uncle So-So is an alcoholic and he likes to, pat and feel. And I don't think we're doing enough as women to make a woman feel like she doesn't have to, or make a female feel like they don't have to give in to or be part of something to me that is just, it's unbelievable to me. It's unbelievable that we could think that that is something that God would do when even the kings and queens, they were having, waterhead babies. And I mean, it seems you would see that incest is something that is against human beings anyway. And I don't know about dogs or other animals that walk, this earth, how many of them, are bisexual, you know what I'm saying? But I'm thinking, ladies, yes, we protected our girls in that you knew so-and-so was a predator. So you made sure that he went in the room with nobody and blah, blah, blah. Women too, women predators as well, where I know she's gonna get the pat if no, that's okay, I'll give my own daughter a bath or give my own son a bath. I think we have done a great job as Black women trying to protect our children from the predators. Mm-hmm. But I think the feminine, I don't know, I liked her writing, but it almost brought too much pain. I mean, I didn't go through what I know some of my cousins, and you know what I'm saying, because I was always on the alert for a hand that stayed on you too long, and being an only child, I was very observant into who's doing what, where, so by the grace, my radar would go up if I saw or felt a predator in the building. Yeah. And we would protect ourselves, and we're not doing it now by checking. Where's Latrita at? No, baby, you come on from back there. You come on. We don't seem to be doing that. I don't mean we, because we're the generation that did get that lesson. But the generation that are coming behind us, I don't think they're getting the lessons that come from when you are of that age. So I don't know. I could be way off, the mark, but I really think we need to, as women, make sure that we stay on guard.
Yes.
For our children.
Yes, Kabibi, thank you. Staying on guard is a whole process, and it's a huge part of having that home place, wherever it is, to offer security, comfort, protection. Thank you all. And we now need to spend some time looking at our chat and Q&A, questions, answers, responses. Who'd like, Noni, is that you or is it?
Yes, I'll share the question and then you can facilitate. One of the questions is, speaking of home, are there specific places that you try to take your readers when you write? Does your home exist within your writing, or are you trying to create new places?
Is there a volunteer?
What's the question for? Anyone?
Yes. Or just raise your hand if you want to answer it. Kamari, I see you nodding your head.
Go ahead.
I think it's a combination talking about creating home place and work. So I definitely do write about my experience growing up in St. Louis, in Louisiana, Texas, all across the South. But then I think there's also a time where I've decided I need to start creating home places for the next generation. Like Nana Kabibi was talking about, like, what do I want that space of refuge for young people to look like coming forward? Like, what can I improve upon? How can I make a safer space for them? So it's a combination for me.
Thank you. Another question?
We have, I think Gay Lloyd's hand was up to answer that question.
Please.
I was just going to say that Homeplace was definitely important to both of my parents. And when my mom did not work, my father was in the Navy, and so he provided all the income. And we went to private school, never thinking about the outside world and whether it was a threat to us. So My parents went out of their way. My father was from Mississippi and my mom was from St. Louis, Missouri. So I'm sure they knew what the outside world looked like, but they hid it from their children, me and myself. So I really honor having a home place.
Thank you, Gaylord. Is there another question, Noni?
Yes. How do we teach the next generation to wield intersectionality as a total for positive or as a tool for positive change?
All right. Dee, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, it just rested on my heart around the grandchildren that I do have today, 2 girls, and what it is that I strongly support in sharing with them around some of the things that, like Nana Kabibi mentioned, keeping your eyes open. They may not understand it, but I still think it's something we can talk about. And I try to make it a conversation that they feel comfortable. I repeatedly say, you can talk to me about anything. And I share that with other girls that I'm in contact with, if I'm ever able to connect with a young woman in any format, whatever it might be, and that there's an opening for me to let them know if there's something that you want to talk about, it's okay. You can have my ear for that. So I think that's one of the ways I feel that we open up this intersectionality across generations, really, to ensure that folks know that even though we shouldered a lot of burden, as did our parents and our parents before them, we are still here for the generations that are coming up.
Okay. Is there another question? Thank you, Dee.
There is. Is there a way to construct home places in the virtual world?
Let's see. Dr. McDade or Noni?
I have.
Let Noni go.
Hey, Noni?
I'll take a run at it. I think it doesn't matter if it's virtual or in person. If you ask me, the home place is the environment that you create. And so I think, especially I think of young people, being able to have connection in a virtual format is really difficult. But if you can be sure to create rituals and check in and really care, and not just the, hey, how you doing, and wait for everybody to say fine and move on, but really connect, find out what's important, or give an opportunity for that uncomfortable pause while people think about how they want to respond. I think that is a way that you can create that home place in a virtual environment.
I would like
And
that.
I see Margaret Tan and Helen and Gaylord. Miss Minnie, I'll leave you to facilitate that.
Okay, Margaret. No, you did. That's fine.
Thank you. I want to just add on to what Noni just said. It's also takes time to do that. We have to like show that, not tell that, but show how it's done. We also have to have them begin to trust us. As young people aren't necessarily wanting to trust adults, which is a good thing, actually, to a degree. It's a safety thing. So we have to show and tell that in a way, and it takes time. It's not going to happen in one session or 5 sessions. That's all I want to say. Thank you, Noni. Yeah.
And Gaylord? Joseph Gaylord?
Yes, and I, Margaret, Noni, yes, I just want to echo what both of you are saying. And recently, my brother died, and that brought my family very close to each other. And it's not that we weren't close, but his death showed us that how much we loved each other. I talked to my nephews and nieces at least once a week, if not more often, and My younger son, I talk to him, we text every single day just to let him know he's in Europe and just to let him know that family is behind him all the time and that no matter what happens there, we have his back. We want to let him know that home is where the heart is and his heart is with the family.
Thank you. I believe we are at the end of our Q&A, and it is time for us to all congratulate each other, applaud each other, thank our guests as well as our co-sponsors through Town Hall, the director and the production staff and Candace. Thank you all very much. And if I had to leave any closing thoughts, it would be simply this. Homeplaces, in my mind, can be any way that I can teach my young adults about how they can strip away old thoughts, get rid of them, and replace them with something that is positive rather than negative. In addition to that, I'm trying to teach my young adults how to be critical viewers of anything on the uses the power of language to control, subdue, and totally find us unable to self-define. So I try to teach them simple things: who, what, when, where, and why. How do you know that's true? I'm finished. Thank you very much and good evening. Thank you, Candace.
Yeah, thank you so much, Minnie. It's been such a treat. On behalf of Town Hall, I want to thank all of you for being here tonight and musing on Bell Hook's work. It's been a really great time. I want to thank all of our audience for watching as well. I encourage you to check out more about our speakers tonight and about the African American Writers Alliance. There's a link in the chat where you can go to their website and find out more about everyone who spoke tonight. And I hope that we'll be able to host all of you at some point at our venue, right at Town Hall. That would be really great to see all of you in person. But thank you so much for coming into this virtual world and spending some time with us. So have a great night.
Thank you, Candace.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you
Good
very
night.
much.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Thank you.
I love you all.